Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Cynthia Stevens, and I'll be chairing the hearing this morning. Joining me from the Board of Revision is Mr. Stuart McPherson and Mr. Bill Moretsky. Our assessor this morning is Mr. Ryan Valderrama, and our secretary is Mr. Stephen Lunn. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. Process will repeat for each item on the docket. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed and recorded and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 through 8 on our docket today. Mr. Lunn, can you please affirm the assessor and the applicant's testimony?
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Ryan Valderrama.
You affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Applicant, please state your full name.
Sarah Cates.
And please stand, sorry. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning. I just want to make sure that I got your name right. Did you say it's Ms. Cates? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure and welcome and thank you for being here. So the first item on this morning's docket is 1681 Pembina Highway. And just before we start, I'm going to confirm with both the assessor and the applicant. We are dealing with the amount of assessed value on all of these properties this morning. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I won't ask that question every time of you. So Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready, you can start with 1681 Pembina Highway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first property on the docket has a file number of 22-1663. It has a roll number of 03092997065. It is located at 1681 1681 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 and we're using the reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $23,479,000. It is classified as 20 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 9 buildings and 2 stories. Its actual year and effective year built is 1972. It has 189 suites with 230 outdoor parking. It has a land area of 303,692 square feet, a planned area of 63,336 square feet, and a gross floor area of 190,008 square feet. On page 3 is the photo of the subject property. And on page 4, I have the income valuation summary. Again, there are 189 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,333.54. The gross potential rent for this property is $3,024,469. has a vacancy rate of 4.2%. In terms of dollars, that is $127,028. It has an effective gross income of $2,897,441, applying the expense rate of 53.81% or $1,559,113. The net operating income is $1,338,328. Using the capitalization rate of 5.7%, the capitalized income is $23,479,439 or $23,479,000 rounded. The next page, page 5, I do have the rent comparables. The first one is located at 1750 Pembina Highway. Its average monthly rent per unit is $1,255. The second one is located at 225 Northtown Road. Its average monthly rent per unit is $1,367. The third one is located at Bridge Lake Drive. Its average monthly rent per unit is $1,397. And the last one is located at 344 Bridge Lake Drive. Its average monthly rent per unit is $1,464. On page 6 is where we have our capitalization rates. If I may just go through it, Madam Chair, on this property, and it will be applied to the rest of the properties as we go on, Madam Chair. So in consideration of the time.
Okay, yes,
So
that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Capitalization rates. A direct capitalization method is used to convert a property's single year of income into an indication of value by dividing the estimated net operating income by an appropriate capitalization rate. Capitalization rates can be derived from properties that have sold by dividing each property's net operating income by its sale price. For the 2023 general assessment, using the April 1st, 2021 as the reference date, capitalization rates were derived from model-generated estimates of net operating income and sale prices that were time-adjusted to April 1st, 2021. The assessed values produced by the application of these model-generated capitalization rates were compared to sale prices, and assessment to sale price ratios were calculated. The resulting ratio statistics for the Assessment and Taxation Departments, or ATD, income producing models satisfy the standards specified and set forth in the Standard of Ratio Studies, which was approved in April 2013. And as published by the International Association of Assessing Officers, or IAAO. ATD's capitalization rates are further supported by comparison with real estate market reports from Colliers International, CBRE National Research, and Cushman and Wakefield. The following chart compares ATD's capitalization rates with the published rates by fitting ATD's rates into the property type category used in these reports. ATD's property type classes, or PTC, are more comprehensive so that they cover every property type in the city. The 20th and 80th percentiles show the range of capitalization rates used by ATD for 60% of the parcels within the specific property type. In many cases, the published rates fall within 20th and 80th percentiles, indicating the tenability of the capitalization rates derived by ATD. So if we go through the schedule or the chart, right near the bottom is where the multifamily capitalization rates are. As of April 1st, 2021, all of the multifamily properties are within 4.8 to 5.6, or I should say all of the property types of multifamily are within the range of 4.8 to 5.6%. And on the next page, I do have the capitalization rate evidence. Again, this is the same as the page 6. It will be applied to the rest of the properties we will be hearing today. The following is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They are not meant to be comparables specific to the subject property. Net operating income has been developed through stabilizing owner-reported income, expense information. Capitalization rates have been derived by dividing the property's net operating income by its sale price. So the first one is located at 2390 McPhillips. It's sold on October 9, 2020. It's sold for $19,400,000. It has 90 suites with an effective year built of 2015, effective age of 2015 as well. So that would translate to $215,556 per suite and a cap rate of 4.79%. The next one is located at 700 St. Mary's. It was sold in April 7, 2020. It's sold for $1,035,000. It has 9 suites, with a year built and effective age of 1963. It's valued at $115,000 per suite, average, and a cap rate of 3.6%. The third one is located at 203 Bertrand. It's sold on June 14, 2019. It's sold for $925,000. It has 9 suites and a year built and effective year built of 1963. In a suite, or an average sale price per suite of about $102,778. It has a cap rate of 4.77%. The next one is located at 555 Corridon. It's sold on November 26, 2018, as a sale price of $1,575,000. It has 16 suites with a year built of 1955 and effective year built of 1955. The average sale price per suite is $98,438, and it has a calculated cap rate of 5.74%. The second one, the fifth one, is located at 677 Maryland. It's sold on December 15, 2020. It has a sale price of 2.4 or $2,400,000 with 32 suites. The year built is 1913 and effective year built is 1972. The average sale price per suite is $75,000 and it has a calculated cap rate of about 5.5%. The last one is located at 32 Arden, as it was sold on March 1st, 2019. It was sold for $2,875,000. There are 23 suites. It has a year built, an actual year built of 1969, and an effective year built of 1984. The average sale price per suite is $125,000 with a cap rate of 5.05%. On the next page, pages 8, 9, 10, and 11 is where the 2020 income statement, income and expense information for the subject property is. And that's my presentation, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Cates, do you have any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
I do, thank you. So if we turn to your income value summary on page 4.
Okay.
Are the inputs shown here all model derived?
Yes, they are all model driven.
And have you considered stabilizing the rents based on the actual income achieved by the property?
I only included the model derived parameters on this, Madam Chair. There are no stabilizing that was done.
Okay. So if we turn to your page 5, where your rent comps are.
Mm-hmm.
So rent comparables 2, 3, and 4 are all newer than the subject property by at least 40 years. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And are you aware of the difference in amenities between these comps 2, 3, and 4 and the subject property?
I wasn't able to inspect the property, so I'm not sure of the amenities, Madam Chair.
Okay, so just as some context for my next question. So the comps are pet friendly with dog runs, they have in-suite laundry, and then further comps.
Okay, Miss Cates.
Sorry,
you can present that in your presentation. It's just questions right now.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, understood. So would you agree that these type of amenities could lead to higher rents being achieved for the properties compared to a property with more basic amenities?
I cannot answer the question, Madam Chair. I cannot assume anything on with regard to that matter, Madam Chair.
Okay. And then just as the final, looking at comps 3 and 4, have you taken a look at the overall level of finishes in those comps compared to the subject?
No, I wasn't able to inspect the interior of these comps, Madam Chair.
Okay. But would you agree that comps that have kind of higher level of finishes and more luxurious elements could lead to higher rents being achieved?
Could be one of the many factors. However, I cannot assume if it's going to lead to a higher rent, average monthly rent per unit, Madam Chair. So I cannot determine that.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPherson, do you have any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
Just a couple of questions. Just following up
Yes,
on the comps 2, 3, and 4. Those are all newer and they're in a essentially different area than the subject, are they not?
Madam Chair, in terms of neighborhood, they may be considered different area or different neighborhood. However, in our studies, they all belong in one market region, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. So were there no other comparables available for older properties on Pembina Island?
Madam Chair, I would say there may be older. However, with the way I was looking at the subject property, I was trying my best to look for 2-bedroom units, or majority of the units would be 2-bedroom units, because it's really hard to find a perfect comparable that would have the same number of unit mix in the area or in the market region even.
I thank you.
Thank you.
And just on your page 6, low rise versus high rise. What is the cutoff there? What is a low rise versus a high rise? It's not necessarily for this subject property because it's 2 stories. I'm assuming that's low rise, but
Yes, sir.
if we can deal with these general questions, you're saying they're going to relate to the rest of the properties as well. So I thought I'd get
Yes,
those
sir.
questions in now. So low rise versus high rise is,
I believe,
what the cutoff?
Oh, sorry to interrupt, sir. I believe the cutoff is around 6 floors.
6 floors?
Anything below it would be considered low rise, and then above it would be high rise, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and I noticed that there's no differentiation as far as the assessment department's concerned. It's only included in there for, I guess it's CBRE and Cushman Wakefield have differentiations for low rise, high rise, and low rise A and B. So that's why those categories are in there, not necessarily for the assessment department. Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I don't know what the assumptions are that were used by the external information we have. However, those are their published rates. Our rates between 4.8 to 5.6 would comprise 20th to 80th percentile, which is about 60% of each property type class under multifamily. So I may if I may add, that may be more samples compared to what the external sources are saying, Madam Chair.
Okay, thanks. And finally, the capitalization rate evidence on page 7. You've given us, I guess, what the actual based on the income and expense that's provided at time of the sale. Is that correct? The
Yes,
NOI that was developed isn't using model, or is it using model?
No, it's not using model. There, the cap rates derived here were using actual net operating income, stabilized net
Good.
operating income. I should add that.
Yeah. Thank you. So, would you happen to know how the model cap rates, how they compare to these actual for these 6 properties? Do you know what the actual comparison is? Like the first one, 2390 McPhillips, the actual is 4.79%. Do you know what the model would apply to that?
I am not sure.
If you don't, that's fine. I just wondered if you knew.
No, I don't have that information with me, sir. And yeah, I wish I knew about that, but no, I don't have that information. Again, model. The way model works is it reacts to a lot of parameters, and it's not just the actuals that it's reacted. I mean, it could be a lot of things like the locations and sizes and all that. But yeah, and I don't have the model derived cap rates for these sales that I have on page 7.
Okay, just for the future, that might be something that's helpful to substantiate the model rents or the model rates that are applied. Thank you, Madam Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I had a few, but Stu stole most of them from me. So, yeah, just getting back to the capitalization rate evidence again. You mentioned that there was actual net operating income used in these 6 excuse me, these 6 properties. The question I have is, if you use that in the formula on this chart, why not put it in the chart itself?
Sir, if I may clarify that one, on page 6, these are all model derived cap rates.
7. Sorry, page 7. Page 7.
Oh yeah, yes, that's right. So the question would be, why aren't these included on page 6? Is that
no, page 7? Like you have your
right,
your chart there,
mm-hmm.
and you have all the sale price and the cap rate. So you mentioned that you've used the actual net operating income provided by the client to come up with your 4. Let's take the first one, 2390 McPhillips.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You use the actual net operating income from that property to derive your 4.79% cap rate.
Yes, sir.
It's just I guess a procedural question for me. Why would you then not put that in the chart itself? Why is that not there?
The chart that you're pertaining to, sir, if I may clarify, is on page 6, right? Or no?
Look, I'm looking at capitalization rate evidence.
Right. So the NOI is not included. Is that the question? Why is the NOI not included?
Yeah, I'm just curious to as if it was used in the calculation of these numbers. Why isn't it on the chart itself?
Right. It's this is a generic template that we have on with regard to the cap rate calculation. However, if we could revert back to the calculation of how we can derive the NOI, we can do an easy math on this one. We can just multiply 19.4 million to 4.79 and get the NOI.
I realize that.
Sir, yes,
I realize
sir.
that as well.
And it's more of I believe we just included all these things in there. However, we can take that into consideration, and maybe we'll see how we can improve this chart in the future, Madam Chair. And thank you for that question, sir.
Okay. Just again, just to confirm, these are the actual net operating owner reported income for these properties, and would it have been like stabilized?
They are stabilized.
Stabilized
NOIs.
for the last 3 years since
I
before
believe
they
it
were
is
sold?
3 years.
Yeah.
I believe it is 3
I
years.
just say overall, there's a little bit of information missing in this chart overall. But
Yes,
thank you. Those are my questions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So on the same page, Mr. Valderrama, on page 7, when I'm looking at these cap rates, the cap rate evidence, none of these buildings are close to the size of the subject. The closest one would be 90 suites. And I'm just wondering, would buildings with a smaller suite complement tend to sell at a lower cap rate? Broader base of buyers.
Just by looking at the sample sales that I have here, it looks like the last 3, which are way smaller, looks like they're registering higher cap rates in this case. So I cannot generalize it. It's a case-to-case basis as well, Madam Chair, depending on the performance or on the net operating income of the property. So I'm not sure how it, if there could be a safe generalization that says if it's lower suites or smaller building size would translate into higher or lower cap rate, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Madam Chair, I just had one more question, if I may.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I just on your on page 8, and I guess onwards, that is the client's provided information, Crystal Properties. Their all of their income and expense information, correct?
That's correct. Only for 2020. That's correct.
But again, just to clarify what you had mentioned earlier, you did not consider any of that information in your model derivations here, correct? Any of that information that client provided in those pages, you did not consider in your calculation. Is that correct?
I reviewed this document, the income and expense information. However, I chose to go with the model derived parameters, Madam Chair.
And what was the reason for that?
My reasoning with that is if we look at page 11, there's a lot of other expenses that were taken off, and we're going with market, what the market is, how the market sees this kind of property in terms of its performance on NOI, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. No more questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Cates, please proceed with your presentation when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the property is 1681 Pembina Highway. So if you turn to page 2 of the brief, you'll see a summary of some of the property facts along with our requested assessment of $20,785,000. If you turn to page 4, you'll see a property description along with an aerial view of the subject. So the subject property is located on the west side of Pembina Highway between Manahan Avenue and Admar Road in the Pembina Strip area of Winnipeg. The property consists of 9 2.5-story structures built in 1972. And the site size is 7 acres and zoned RMFS. So the subject property is a total of 189 units, which are all 2-bedroom. There are 230 outdoor parking stalls. If you turn to page 5, you'll see a Google map view of the subject, so you could get a better idea of where it's situated in the area. And if you jump ahead now to page 8, this is just an overview of our income approach. So for this property, we are disputing the assessor's market gross rent applied, and we're applying a market gross rent of $2,618,596 based on the actual stabilized income of the property. And for the purposes of this report, we're not disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5.70%. So if you turn to page 9, you'll see our valuation sheet for the subject property. So starting with the market gross rents, those are stabilized based on the most recent year's income of the subject property. We've applied a vacancy rate of 4.2%. And then adding in some other forms of income, we get an effective gross income of $594,155. So then going through the expenses that we have listed here, they've been stabilized based on the most recent year. Sorry. So the ones where there's no notes, they've been stabilized based on the most recent year. And then where there's notes, it shows if we've averaged them or taken a percentage there. Now going through the repair and maintenance, which is line item 27 here, we've stabilized that at $2,082 a suite. So if I could direct everyone to page 36 of this PDF, we have a more in-depth breakdown showing how we've arrived at that repair and maintenance. Is everyone on page 36?
Okay, I think everybody's probably there. Yes, thanks.
Okay, so what you'll see here is we have columns detailing the repair and maintenance for years 2016 to 2020, along with a 5-year average. So what you'll notice at the bottom of each year column is that we have an R&M total, and then the line item under that is the R&M less capital expenditures and less waste and snow. So the capital expenditures are noted by the red items on the top of the spreadsheet, and then waste and snow has not been included because we have stabilized that separately. So then if you look in terms of the actual stabilization toward the right-hand side of the sheet, you'll see that we have maximum values listed for the categories of flooring replacement, appliance replacement, painting, and then counters, cupboards, and carpentry. So we've interviewed various property managers to find those typical per suite values, and then those are the maximums that would be allowed into the R&M for those categories. And then in terms of the other categories for the stabilization, we've generally stabilized based on a 5-year average, but we've noted where something has been excluded. For example, if there's an outlier, like if we look at the pool column, which is the second purple row, you'll see we've excluded 2020 from that average just because that value seemed out of place. And then additionally, with the capped values there, what we've done for some of them is just taken a proportion of that expense so that we stay within those maximums. So for example, when we look at painting, even when removing the outlier of 2018, we've still then taken a proportion of 94%. So we're within that 225 limit there. So then based on that, we've come to our stabilized value of $2,082, which is highlighted on the bottom right-hand side of that sheet. And then for further support for our R&M, I've also submitted an R&M study, which is a separate document. So if I could just have everyone open that document, so we could just briefly go through that.
All right, was that the rebuttal you submitted earlier today?
Not the rebuttal, I submitted just the R&M study as part of my initial submission.
Okay, I have it.
You have it? Okay.
It's at the bottom of the.
Okay, so I can proceed with that one.
Does everybody have it, Mr.
No,
Reski,
I'm
Mr. McPherson?
I'm sorry, what page are we on?
Sorry,
you have to go back to the main agenda and scroll down to the bottom, and it's a repair and maintenance study. That's separate document.
I've got appendix. But I only go to page 37.
Oh, yeah. If you go back to the main agenda that lists all the properties.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's okay. At the very bottom, it's there, repair and maintenance.
Okay. So let me get there. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. So if you turn to page 2 of that R&M study document, you'll see an overview where we have average rents, and then the second table down shows the average R&M values for a variety of different year categories. So for this property, what we're looking at is low rise 1960 to 1979. So that would be index 10. Now we note for this age bracket, there's a renovated category and just a standard category. For this one, we've just gone with the standard category. There was a permit taken out in the 800,000 range in 2017, but it was noted as being for crawl space, which, given that the nature of that work was more structural rather than something that would affect the upkeep, we just decided to use the standard category here. So then if I could just direct everyone just to see where these averages came from, if you could go to page 13 of this document, then it shows all of the inputs. So on pages 13 and 14 shows the inputs that derive those averages. So if you just wanted to kind of take a look through there, essentially these values show a range. So while an R&M per suite of $2,000 may be on the higher end, it's still supported and within the range that's shown here. So if we could just go back to page 9 of the Altus brief, once you've viewed that, just to go back to kind of wrap up the valuation here. So back to the brief. So from that R&M, then our total expense ratio is 54.3%. giving us an NOI of $1,184,719. And with the 5.7% cap rate applied, that comes to an indicated market value, which rounded would be $20,785,000. And that works out to $110,000 per suite. So then the appendix starts on page 11. And what I've included in the appendix is just starts with some interior photos. So you'll see the units are in good condition, but more basic in terms of finishes. So whereas kind of the comps used by the assessor had a lot more amenities, higher finishes like stainless steel, quartz countertops, etc. And then scrolling through the rest of the appendix, you'll see the city value sheet, financial statements from 2016 to 2020 for the property. And then the last 2 pages are just the R&M breakdown, which we've gone through, and just the valuation sheet included again as the final page, just for convenience there. So that concludes my presentation on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, do you have any questions for Ms. Cates?
None at the moment, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
I do not. No, it was all straightforward.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson.
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. Thank you. If I go to page 36, I'm sorry, what was the significance of them being highlighted in purple?
That was just to show a different category, just to show kind of the breakdown of categories there. But yeah, no real significance. Those are still being included here in the total.
Okay. All right. And discounts. What are the discounts that are being subtracted from the gross income?
The discounts for 2020 are shown as $507,368.
No, I know the amount, but what are they for? What are they? Are they free rent? Are they discounted rents? Are they what are the discounts?
I'd have to look into that further. I'm not sure at this time.
Okay. So you don't know whether they're allowable discounts or whether it's just keeping the rent up for allowing what the rentalsman allows every year for an increase in case someone moves out and someone moves in. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think all of those would be possibilities. I apologize. I didn't look into that specific item.
Okay, thank you. And on your R&M report, I see there's no addresses included. I'm assuming that's for confidentiality.
Yeah, exactly. So on the R&M study, we keep the addresses out, and then once those properties are heard at the Board of Revision, then we release the addresses. So as more properties are heard at the board, then those will be released. So
once they're heard, you will include the addresses?
Yes.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My question, when just going back to your page, where am I here? Page 9, I think it is. So your rents, I'm sorry, you may have said this, but I'm just trying to confirm, are your rents based on actuals or?
Yeah, so we have the actual rents, and then we use the most recent year's income of the property for our stabilization.
Okay, and do you have any comps for similar rental properties in your document?
We don't include comps just since we're basing it off the actual income and expenses.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, that's all I had as well. Okay, Mr. Valderrama, any requirement to summarize on this property?
No, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Cates, any summary?
No requirement for summary. I just had a question though. I do have some short rebuttal just for the assessor's cap rates, but I wasn't sure if it just made more sense to go through it for the property that we're actually disputing the cap rate. So that would be for 1777 Pembina. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do just so you know the process. We'll do your rebuttal after all of the evidence has been heard from both you and Mr. Valderrama, and then we'll hear your rebuttal after that.
Okay.
And it's the 1777. You said you wanted to do it there.
Yeah, because that's the first property we were looking at.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so that concludes this property. So the next item on the docket is 1750 Pembina Highway. Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready.
Madam Chair, 1750. Pembina,
yes.
Is that right? Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-3411. It has a roll number of 03-080-026-000. It is located at 1750 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $39,810,000. It is classified as 20 residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 4 buildings, 14 stories. It has an actual year built of 1977, same as effective year built. It has 273 suites with 328 parking. It has a land area of 208,216 square feet, a planned area of 20,474 square feet, a gross floor area of 292,296 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. Page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, it has 273 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,405.23. It has a gross potential rent of $4,603,533, a vacancy rate of 4.2%. And in terms of dollars, it is $193,348. It has an effective gross income of $4,410,185. It has an expense ratio or expense rate of 49.45%, or in terms of dollars, it's $2,180,836. It has a net operating income of $2,229,349, using the capitalization rate of 5.6%. The capitalized income is $39,809,804, or $39,810,000 rounded. On the next page, page 5, are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 25 Ancaster Gate. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,537. The next one is located at 344 Bridge Lake Drive. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,464. The third one is located at 140 Eaglewood Drive. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,534. And the last one is located at 345 Bridge Lake Drive. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,397. Page 6 is the capitalization rates chart. And page 7 is the capitalization rate evidence chart. On page 8 is where the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
Yes, thank you. So on your income value summary on page 4, is it fair to say that the rents here are again model derived and not based on the actual income of the property?
All parameters on page 4 are model derived parameters, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the average monthly rent shown here is about $1,405. Yet when this property was used as a rent comparable for our previous property, the average monthly rent was shown at $1,255. So would you agree there's a discrepancy there?
As I have indicated, yes, this is a model derived parameter.
Okay, thank you. So on page 5 for your rent comps. So would you agree that all the rent comparables selected are newer than the subject property by at least 40 years?
Based on effective year built, yes.
And would you agree that none of the rent comps selected are high-rise apartments like the subject?
Yes, that's correct.
And are you aware that comparable 3 at 140 Eaglewood is a townhome development?
I wasn't able to inspect the property, so I won't be able to determine that, Madam Chair.
Okay, so you didn't look at these on the website either?
I wasn't able to.
Okay. So are you aware of the layouts of these units, for instance, having multiple levels?
Without inspecting the properties, no, I won't be able to know those.
And this comp also has 3 and 4 bedroom units where the subject does not. Is that correct?
For comp 3, yes, there are 3 and 4 bedroom units, correct.
And would you agree that these larger units can skew the average monthly rent per unit?
Yes, it can pull up the monthly average rent per unit. Correct.
And have you taken a look at the overall features and level of finishes of the comps compared to the subject?
I wasn't able to inspect the interior of these comparable units.
Okay, but would you agree that greater amenities in units and in the buildings, a higher level of finishes could lead to higher rents being achieved versus more basic levels in the subject?
Again, I am not sure how the market responds to those. So I won't be able to answer the question, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson, any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
I do not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
On the rent comparables, page 5. So when the model derives the information, does it, how much weight does it put on these other 4 comparables that are provided by you on page 5?
I'm not sure how the model responds to that one, Madam Chair. However, it's a calculation of what's going on in the market and in the region as well. So and a lot of other factors are being considered by the model, which I am unsure how it is, Madam Chair.
So would it be fair to say that it considers it at least to some degree, or does not consider it, which would be correct of those 2 options?
Well, the way
It does consider it, yes or no? It doesn't.
I believe based on the market, yes, it considers these monthly average monthly rents per unit. If it's similar and other factors being considered by the model.
No further questions.
And
Thank you,
and I have no questions. So Ms. Cates, you can proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. So the property is 1750 Pembina Highway. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $36,771,000. If you turn to page 4, you'll see a property description. So the subject property is located to the north of the intersection of Pembina Highway and Bishop Brandon Boulevard in the Pembina Strip area of Winnipeg. The property consists of 2 high-rise apartment buildings that were built in 1977, and the site size is noted as 4.8 acres and is zoned RMFL. The subject property has a total of 273 units, including 53 one-bedroom and 220 two-bedroom units, and there are a total of 328 outdoor parking stalls noted. If you turn to page 5, you'll again see a Google Map view of the subject property. And then if you jump ahead to page 8, you'll see the overview of our income approach. So for the purposes of this report, we are disputing the assessor's market gross rents applied, and we are applying a market gross rent of $3,799,050 based on the actual stabilized income of the subject property. And for the purposes of this report, we are not disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5.6%. So if you turn to page 9, you'll see our valuation sheet for the property. So we've applied the market gross rents of $3,799,050. We've used a market vacancy rate of 4.2%. And when adding in the other income, that gives us an effective gross income of $3,828,132. In looking at the expenses shown here, for a couple of the line items, we've taken, instead of doing a 3-year average, we did a 2-year average, just so that we were not factoring in outliers, just to not skew the averages there. And then our stabilized R&M per suite is $2,097. So again, we can look at on page 36, we have the entire breakdown. I won't go through it in as much detail just for expediency, but it is on page 36 for everyone's reference. So then our expense ratio applied is 46.2%, giving us a net operating income of $2,059,151. And with a 5.6% cap rate, that gives us an indicated market value rounded of $36,771,000, which works out to $135,000 per suite. And then if you go to page 11, that would be the start of our appendix. So again, I've included some interior photos just to show the condition there, some features of the building, as well the city value, the financial statements for all the years 2016 to 2020. And the last two pages are the detailed breakdown of the repair and maintenance, as well as the valuation sheet just included on the final page again. So that concludes my presentation for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, do you have any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just wanted to, on page 9, sorry, the vacancy rate that was used was about 4.2%. Is that the city's vacancy rate?
Yeah, well, we're using a market vacancy. So in this case, yeah, the city has used that rate also. So it's not.
Sorry. And as I've indicated earlier, would you agree that it is a model-derived parameter?
Well, we submit in our cap rate study, which was also submitted as part of this, we submit the CMHC rates. But in this case, yeah, we're accepting the city's vacancy rate.
And is it correct that the average vacancy rate for this specific property is 1.5%?
Correct, that is the average vacancy rate, but in terms of the market investor who would be looking at the property, they would apply a market vacancy rate, not a rate of 1.5%.
Okay, and you mentioned earlier that the stabilized R&M is about 2,097 per suite, correct?
Correct.
Per suite, sorry. And it is based on the market as well, right?
This is based on, on page 36, we have not page 36, page 19 in this document. That's my apologies there. So we have the breakdown of the repair and maintenance. So it's based on the actual repair and maintenance for the property over the years 2016 to 2020. So yeah, that is page 19 is the detailed repair and maintenance breakdown that's the stabilized values based on.
Market study, correct or no?
This is based on the actual the repair and maintenance expenses for the property for 2016 to 2020.
Okay. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions for Ms. Cates?
Yeah, just curious if she has any comment on the expenses that net operating income of, your expenses of $1.768 million. That's actually quite a bit lower than what the city had provided.
Yeah, we use a lower expense rate just because we're basing it off the stabilized expenses of the property. So sometimes that comes in a little lower than what the model derives.
So the crux of your information you're providing is basically that you're providing actual stabilized information for this property, correct?
Correct.
However, you didn't do that for the vacancy. Is that the only one you didn't do that for?
So essentially, so with the vacancy, we use a market vacancy, but essentially in our valuations, we use the actual stabilized income and expenses of the property, but we do apply a market vacancy, kind of thinking of it from the perspective of like a prudent investor.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson, do you have any questions?
Yeah, that was actually the question I had as well. You stated that you used the market vacancy because I'm paraphrasing here, so correct me if I'm wrong. You said that purchasers would consider market vacancy, not the actual vacancy. Is that correct?
That's our perspective. Yeah, that would be the position here.
Okay, I understand that, but why would they not be considering market rents and market repair and maintenance as well, rather than actuals when they're looking at purchasing? When they look at it as an entirety?
Yeah. So essentially, if someone was going to be purchasing this property, these are the actual rents that the property can attain, and these are the actual expenses that the property experiences. But 1.5% vacancy wouldn't be seen as something that could be sustained by the market. So we apply a market vacancy, but in our view, stabilizing based on actual rents and actual expenses does capture the market for this property.
Okay, thank you. And just in your addenda, the photos, those, I'm assuming those are from a website rather than from an inspection?
Yeah, the photos that I provided in the briefs today are from the website, just due to kind of logistical challenges with going inside people's actual units. So, yeah.
Yeah, they're very nicely staged too. It just seems that there would be maybe display units or.
Yeah, essentially I wanted to just provide the board with an idea of the condition of the units, while granting that absolutely, like, photos that are on the website are going to be presented probably a bit better. But just based on what we find with going into actual units, there can be issues with then trying to publish those photos as part of the public record.
Okay, and this one, I see there's a hot tub there. Is there a pool there as well in this complex?
Yes, I believe it has. It has an outdoor pool and a hot tub.
I thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I think my questions have all been answered. So, Mr. Valderrama, any requirement to summarize on this property?
No requirement for summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, any summary?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. That concludes this property. Next item on the docket then is 1777 Pembina Highway. So, Mr. Valderrama, you can proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-3412. It has a roll number of 03-065-219-000. It is located at 1777 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023, a reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value is $8,716,000. It is a 20 residential 2 classification with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings, 2 stories. Its actual and effective year built is 1969. With 70 suites and 80 outdoor parking. The land area for this property is 67,288 square feet, a planned area of 24 square feet, and a gross floor area of 64,872 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, there are 70 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,090.52. The gross potential rent for the property is $916,037. The vacancy rate is 4.2%. In terms of dollars, that is $38,474. It has an effective gross income of $877,563, applying an expense ratio of 47.36% or $415,614. The net operating income is $461,949. Using the capitalization rate of 5.3%, the capitalized income rounded is $8,716,000. Next page, page 5, are the rent comparables. The first one is located at 1793 Pembina Highway. Its average monthly rent per unit is $1,110. On the next one, page or comparable 2, is located at 1750 Pembina Highway. Has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,255 or $1,255. Third one is located at 1833 Pembina Highway. Its average monthly rent per unit is $1,102. And on comparable 4, it is located at 1785 Pembina Highway. Its average monthly rent per unit is $1,110. Again, on page 6 is the capitalization rates chart. On page 7 is the capitalization rate evidence chart. And on page 8 is the 2020 income and expense information that was submitted to us. And that's my presentation now, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cates, do you have any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
I do, thank you. So are you aware that this property operates as part of a entire complex along with the properties at 1785 and 1793 Pembina?
Based on the 2020 income and expense information that I have attached, it looks like it is in a combined expense or income statement with other roll numbers.
Okay. And then if we turn to page 4 for your income value summary, so we can see the cap rate applied to this property is 5.3%. But are you aware if the properties that are operated as the economic unit, if they were on the same roll, would a higher cap rate have been generated based on having multiple buildings on the site?
As I mentioned earlier, it is hard to determine on how model works or how it determines. However, it may be affected by size, location, age. Could be a lot of factors that may affect the capitalization rate being assigned by the model, Madam Chair.
Okay. So if we turn to your cap rate table on page 6, so we could see that the brokers don't apply cap rates lower than 5% for low-rise properties, and it's kind of known they evaluate high quality. Yet the city applies much lower rates, with the 20th percentile being 4.8%. So can you provide any info on the sales being used that are achieving these low rates?
As I've mentioned earlier, these are all model generated, and these are represents 60% of the parcels of the city as a whole. So depending on the property type class, any properties or any multifamily properties might go below 4.8, which is lower than the 20th percentile or higher than the 20th percentile. So and I'm not privy to the information on how the external sources are determining their ranges.
Okay. So would you have any knowledge of how many sales are included to come up with this chart, or in what area, like what ratio are high to low rise, etc.?
I am not sure how many sales were included in this. However, I am sure that this is a model derived ranges.
Okay. So if we turn to page 7 for your cap rate evidence. So do you have the workups to accompany these sales shown here?
As I've mentioned earlier, No, it's not attached on my evidence. However, these are all calculated cap rates based on a stabilized NOI, actual NOI.
Okay. And for 700 St. Mary's, are you aware if this property was purchased with the intent to renovate?
I am not aware that it is it has an intention to be renovated. However, any intentions may be subject to an execution or not execution of the intent. So that's my opinion in terms of whatever the intent is to be bought by or whatever the intent of the buyer is. It may be an assumption or hypothetical case until it becomes renovated.
Okay, but you would agree that sales that were purchased with the intent to renovate shouldn't be used in a cap rate study, correct?
I am not sure of that. I cannot answer that. Sorry. So.
Okay. And are you aware if this property had a history of like any low repair and maintenance to it?
700 St. Mary's. I am not aware without looking at the expense or information mailer that was submitted.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions for this property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson, any questions?
Just one. You're saying that 1793, that complex to the south, was a combined income and expense return? Is that correct? With the subject and the other properties to the south?
I believe, sir, that on page 8, I do have the combined roll numbers that's included.
Right.
Or that's attached to the subject property we're discussing right now. So I'm just going to double check, see if it is that one. Yes, based on the information that I have on page 8, comparable one is attached to the subject property that we're discussing.
Okay, so if it was a joint I&E, how did they determine on your comparable, how did they determine that rate of $1,110 rent? Was that
I am sure on how it was determined, sir. However, I do see that it's pretty close to the average monthly rent per unit of the subject property. So maybe a calculation on total number of units, probably, or a distribution. I'm just trying to see behind the numbers, but I'm not totally 100% sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's very close, but I see the subject is 1090.52 and comparables 1 and 4 are 1,110 each. Right. And they've all got the same number of units. And so I'm just wondering how they determine a different number. But
again, if I may, the 1090.52 is again a model derived number, so it's possible that the actuals might be a little bit different.
So the 1090 is model generated for the subject, but numbers 1 and 4 comparables, those are actuals as far as you can determine?
Just basing it off of the income and expense mailer and number of units, it looks like it was just prorated based on the number of units, sir. Okay,
and I think you also mentioned there's many variables that go into determining a cap rate.
Yes, sir.
But I'm just wondering the 5.3% cap on this particular property versus the ones that we've heard prior to this, which are larger and newer, but in the same general vicinity with higher cap rates. I just wondered if you could maybe explain what some of the variables might be for this to have a lower cap rate.
It's hard to determine or maybe think of what are the main factors that the model has considered in terms of generating a cap rate for a specific property, Madam Chair. With that said, I am unsure of how really the cap rate has, or the model has assigned a cap rate on different properties, including the subject property.
Okay, I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Moransky, any questions?
I do not.
And I do not either. So Ms. Cates, you can please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. So the property is 1777 Pembina Highway. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $8,128,000. And if you turn to page 4, you'll see our property description. So the subject property is located on the west side of Pembina Highway, north of its intersection with Adamar Road in the Pembina Strip area of Winnipeg. So the property consists of 2.5-story structures built in 1969. And the site size is 1.5 acres and zoned RMFM. So the subject property operates as part of a complex, which includes 1777, 1785, and 1793 Pembina Highway. So the subject property has a total of 70 units, including 46 one-bedrooms and 24 two-bedroom units. And the complex has a total of 210 units and 240 outdoor parking stalls. Again, if you turn to page 5, you'll see the Google Map view of the subject. And if you turn to page 8, you'll see the overview of our income approach. So for the purposes of this report, we're disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5.3%, and Altus is using a cap rate of 5.75% based on our cap rate study, which we can go through it once we're looking at the valuation sheet. But just for an overview of what we've done with the cap rates. So the first table that you'll see there is our base cap rates for 2023 stratified by year. So those would be assuming good quality properties in good locations. And then in the second table, what we do is we look at the property on a site-specific basis and determine if the cap rate should have increase or decrease risk factors to it based on what we're seeing at the property. So for this property specifically, based on the age, we started a base cap rate of 5.5%. And then based on the site-specific factors, we adjust the cap rate from there. So for the condition, we note that it's in good condition, so that would decrease the risk. In terms of the suite mix, there's a 2-to-1 ratio of one-bedroom units versus two-bedroom units, which we would note increases the risk here as we're seeing preferences toward larger units from tenants. And then in terms of the supply and demand, the saturation of newer apartments increases the risk. We're seeing an oversupply of multifamily. And then, so for properties like this, it's creating like a flight to quality. So that would have an impact on kind of all the multifamily stock in the city. So that gives us our 5.75% cap rate. So if you turn to page 9, you'll see our valuation for the property. Now, I'd just like to note here that since their income statements are all together, what we've done is we've included the income and expenses as a total, and then where we break it out for this property specifically is in the net operating income, which is line 33B toward the bottom of the page. So that's why the numbers look a lot higher than the city assessment column. So starting with the market gross rents, we're applying $2,798,127. So that's the total rents for all three of the properties. We're applying a vacancy rate of 4.2%. And when adding in the other income sources, the effective gross income is $2,735,160 for the complex. In terms of the expenses, for one of the averages, you'll note that we've just done the average of 2018 to 19, so as not to include any outlying values that may skew the averages there. We've stabilized the R&M at $2,095 a suite, and a detailed breakdown of the R&M would be shown on page 18 of the document for the background of how we arrived at that value. So our expense ratio is 48.7%. leading to a net operating income for the complex of $1,402,025. And so a net operating income for the subject, specifically at 1777 Pembina, of $467,342. And using a 5.75% cap rate, that would give us an indicated value rounded of $8,128,000. So if I could direct everyone now to the cap rate document, so just the different document from here, just to briefly go through that.
Okay, so this is on our agenda again, down towards the bottom, correct, Stephen? Yes, okay. Does everybody have that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Okay, so if you turn to page 2 of the cap rate study, you'll see we start just with a breakdown kind of showing the city's cap rates kind of falling into a large range there at 3.85 to 7.4%, with most being within the high 4 to mid 5 range. As you move toward the middle of the page, you'll see a summary of the broker market reports. So what we're seeing here is either no compression from last cycle or low compression at 25 basis points. We note that the cap rates reported by the brokers can be skewed by the inclusion of more investment style properties and also other costs included that we're not aware of. And then if you look toward the bottom of page 2, you'll see there's just some language surrounding interest rates. So essentially, the idea here is just that the interest rates are only one part of the cap rate, and that the cap rates don't necessarily move at a 1-to-1 ratio with the yields, just because lenders would have had the anticipation that this was just a temporary measure. And we include just some graphs showing the different property types, as well as a comparison of interest rates versus cap rates. If you turn to page 4, this gets into a discussion of the factors that we're using in that factor chart that we're looking at as part of the brief. So not all of these will apply to every property type. So we review it just on a site-specific basis to see what would be applicable to the property at hand. So for instance, on our docket today, like building type and construction would be a factor. For example, if there's wood frame, that would generally be considered, a bit riskier than other types of constructions that will kind of come up later today on our docket. In terms of building amenities, we're seeing that tenant preferences have changed, and this is a trend that predated COVID. So we're seeing more working from home and more demand for amenities such as in-suite laundry, more outdoor spaces, more social spaces, etc. Again, durability and quality of income will come up on a property later today in the docket with social housing, just essentially the idea that affordable housing units place restrictions on rents and prospective tenants. And then in terms of suite mix, we're seeing trends toward preferences for larger units, more space to potentially have office space or just some additional space with people having spent more time at home. And then finally, a big factor is just the supply and demand. So as we're seeing more supply of multifamily, there's risk associated that it's not going to be picked up at the same rates. So if you look toward the bottom of page 5, you'll see just a comparison of cap rates to the previous cycle, just for reference here. And then if you turn to page 6, you'll see our floor cap rate sales. So I just wanted to make a correction to the sale at 32 Arden. So essentially just due to the lag with the evidence submission deadline, I wasn't able to correct it in time, but I just wanted to verbally correct it for reference. So instead of a 5.36% cap rate, we're using a 5.16% cap rate. And I'll just briefly give an explanation of the difference there that led to that different calculation. So we're using the December 2018 rent roll, which includes parking and discounts. We therefore are not adding parking income as we were doing before. And we also changed laundry to include the 2017 amount, since it wasn't reasonable to that it would be zero for 2018. So that's essentially just a broad overview of what we've changed in the calculation there to get 5.16%. So then following from that, our cap rate range of our sales goes from 5.16% to 6.85%. For 535 Victor, the sale, like it cleared land titles June 2nd, 2021. However, it was posted on MLS and the sale price was shown as finalized in December of 2020. So we have included that here, given that the sale information would have been present to the market within our reference period. And then if you turn to page 7, we've done a bit of a breakdown on sale price per suite categorized by different year categories. So you could get a sense of the averages and medians there. And then the rest of page 7 is just summarizing the base cap rates that we're using, as well as all the factors we're considering for the site-specific adjustment. So both of these two final tables were included in the brief. So that kind of concludes the report section of this report, but I just briefly wanted to touch on a couple important pages in the appendix. So essentially, just to guide through the appendix here, Appendix A is on page 8. This is just a sampling of different city cap rates, just to kind of show like variability among, quite similar properties. So just that we're not quite sure what's kind of what the methodology is there. If you jump ahead to page 14, that would be the start of Appendix B. So essentially that would be the data that went into our market report table. So just in case, if you wanted to see the background of the broker reports and how we got that summary table, that would start at page 14. If you jump ahead to page 20, that would be the start of our appendix for the factors, the risk factors that we talked about. So just if you wanted to see the background documentation there. Now I'll just flag a couple pages just for reference. So page 22, this is a City of Winnipeg economic report showing the pre-existing trend of increased amount of people spending time at home, working from home. Then if you jump ahead to page 37 and 38, this is just speaking to the supply and demand. So we have a chart here showing the amount of new inventory of apartments coming onto the market. So that would be on page 37. And then page 38 is a breakdown of new and pending supply by region, just to get a sense based on the area of how much stock is coming onto the market. And then if you would just go to page 40, if you look at the highlighted blurb at the bottom of the page, it speaks to new apartment units and just showing that newer units are being absorbed at a slower rate. Now, page 43 is the start of Appendix D, which is the background of how the cap rate sales are derived. So if you wanted to see the workups and the supporting documentation for the cap rates, that would start at page 43. And that takes up the bulk of the appendices, but then we also just have our final appendix on page 74. So that's Appendix E, and that's showing the breakdown of the sale price per suite and the different sales that were included to get that sale price per suite table that we looked at earlier. So that concludes the cap rate presentation of the report. So if I could just get everyone to just turn back to the Altus brief, just to page 9 of the valuation. So with that 5.75, we have our indicated value of $8,128,000 rounded. That works out to $116,000 a suite. And then if you turn to page 11, that's the start of our appendix. So again, we have some interior photos of the suites, the city value page, all the financial statements that were used from 2016 to 2020. Then page 18 is our repair and maintenance breakdown. And then page 19 would just be the valuation sheet included again for reference. So that would conclude my presentation for 1777 Pembina.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, do you have any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to direct everyone's attention on page 9 of the brief for the 1777 Pembina Highway, the income and expense stabilization chart or spreadsheet. Based on line item 20, or I'm looking at actually line item 27, repair and maintenance. So 2095 per suite is based on the calculation of the R&M for that was surveyed in the market. Is that correct?
So the 2095 a suite would be based on the actual repair and maintenance expenses for the complex, just because we weren't able to break those values out, and then based on that divided by the number of suites. So that would give us the 2095 a suite. So it's based on the actuals.
So it is the actual R&M per suite, 2095 for this specific property, correct?
It was the actual and then stabilized to get the 2095.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, stabilized actuals. Okay. And the 5.75 cap rate is based on the cap rate study. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have our cap rate study, which includes our sales, and then also our risk factors that we're going to be considering for a site-specific analysis. So yes, it'd be based on the cap rate study.
Okay. Going to the cap rate study document, page 5.
Page 5. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. At the bottom of the page, there is a comparison to previous cycle 2020 to 2022, and I believe these are all assessment capitalization rate. If I'm, is that correct?
Well, these would have been the final settled cap rates from last cycle, which would be yeah. So those were included.
Which leads me to my next question. Would you be aware that these cap rate settlements are done in confidence or confidential in terms of the process of how they were derived, correct?
Well, it would be commonplace to have them included. So this would come from the kind of institutional knowledge of others in the office based on their history with the assessment department, and they've chosen to include these.
Mm-hmm. And would it be correct to say that these were done at the municipal board case management process, which is again confidential in nature?
I would assume they were done at the municipal board, but I can't speak to the exact just because I wasn't involved directly in those.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And okay, which leads me back to my first question. These are all assessment cap rates, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, they're based on the prior assessment cycle. Yeah.
Okay. And on page 6, just again, you mentioned this when you presented page 6. 535 Victor Street is again, it was registered in June 2021. Would you agree that that's past April 1st, 2021?
The land titles date would be past April 1st, 2021, but the meeting of the minds in terms of when the actual sale took place and when it would have been known to the market was within the reference period.
Correct. Okay. And if there is a sale date, would that involve the exchange of actual money for the good that they're buying? Is that correct?
Well, the sale date would be just the day it closed. I'm not sure of the particulars.
Okay. And for the other, I'm assuming, wait, I shouldn't assume, sorry. On page 6, this is where you based the 5.75 cap rate for the subject property, correct?
These are our sales that support our cap rates, but they're not meant to be like a direct comparison to specific properties. But these are the sales that are supporting our cap rate ranges that we're suggesting.
575. Okay. And on page, if I might go down, that's farther down on page. Where's that? Page 44. Oh, it's farther down. The sale 555 Victor Street. The stabilized R&M on this one is $1,000 per suite. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's based on actual stabilized R&M, correct?
I have to just look at the documents. Well, that would be based on page 46.
Okay. Let's see. And page 48 again, there's the R&M. I believe when I calculated it, it's around 1,442 and 62 cents per suite, correct? Well, I did the math, so.
Okay, yeah, 1442. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, correct. And just those two, would you agree that they are way lower in terms of R&M compared to the subject property?
Those are lower compared to the subject property, but we base the repair and maintenance on the actual repair and maintenance expenses of the subject properties. So different subject properties would be different.
Okay, those are the questions I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
Yeah, okay. Just going back, I guess, to the cap rate study. Well, let's go back to okay, let's stay on the cap rate study. Sorry. Bear with me for a moment, please. I have to keep rotating these things all the time. Okay, the backup for this cap rate cap rate values that you arrived at for these other properties, that was back in another appendix, correct?
Yeah, so it's Appendix D. So that would start at page 43 of the cap rate study. It's just the backup information, yes, to the sales.
Okay. And where would you have got that information for the let's say the expenses, things like that?
So essentially the information that we would have got for these sales would have been based on like publicly available information. So where we had the full statements, we were able to use those, but in some cases we didn't have the full statements.
So these are publicly available information, meaning that they're public corporations that had it, or can you provide a little bit more in detail on that?
For sure. So for example, like with 535 Victor, the income information was by a realtor, and it like we would have gotten the items from MLS likely in that case. Because we wouldn't have had the full income breakdowns. We wouldn't have had possession of the full income statements there. Yeah, so there was kind of different documentation available through CPIX or Matrix. Some of them, it looks like we have the full breakdown. So in that case, we may have just gotten permission to use the information we had as part of the cap rate study. If it wasn't entirely public. So
okay.
I don't know if that helps.
Oh, sure, it does, yep. And then getting back to the brief.
Yeah.
On page 9 again, the vacancy percent is 4.2. Is that on the average column it says 4.2. Now, is that the actual from the other columns, or again, is that the market?
So in terms of the vacancy for the average 2018 to 2020, that would be the actual.
Uh-huh. Okay, so they just happen to be the same this time.
Correct. That's, yeah, it looks like that.
Okay, that's it. No more questions for me.
Mr. Valderrama, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Oh yes, Mr. Meretsky reminded me of my question regarding the vacancy rate.
Okay, well, just let me just get Mr. McPherson's questions, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's okay, Mr. McPherson.
Yeah, thank you. I guess mine's just based on your cap rate, page 8 of your brief. You've got a base of 5.5%, and then you've got site-specific adjustments. So I see you've got condition good, decreased risk, so I'm assuming that would drop the cap rate. And then you've got suite mix, increased risk, which would bring it back up, and then supply and demand increased risk, which would bump it further. These other specific categories, building type and construction, masonry construction, there's no adjustment versus wood frame. Is that not a normal adjustment as well?
So I didn't do an adjustment there because then it kind of would have balanced itself out, because generally we would do an adjustment for multiple buildings on the site. So there's 2 buildings as part of the parcel. So if we did a bump for masonry, but then a bump down for multiple buildings, it kind of would have balanced itself out for that one.
Okay, and the parking 1-to-1, that's not desirable for an older type property?
We would consider it sufficient in the case of this property because it's a higher proportion of 1-bedroom units. But in terms of the actual like zoning bylaws for parking, it usually has higher requirements, like 1.5 stalls per unit. So we wouldn't consider 1-to-1 to be a decreased risk, but we would consider it to be sufficient in the case of this specific property. So.
Okay, and the supply and demand saturation of newer apartments increased risk. What is the ratio of newer apartments as far as 1-bedrooms versus 2-bedrooms? Do you know?
I don't have a specific breakdown on the unit mix with the newer apartments, but if we wanted to just reference the amount of newer stock coming on, we could go to page 37 and 38 of the cap rate study, just showing how much the new supply has actually been increasing in recent years.
Right. So the suite mix, you're saying there's increased risk because there's more 1-bedrooms versus the 2-bedrooms. But if there's more 2-bedrooms becoming available, would the 1-bedrooms not be more desirable then?
From our stance, based on what we're seeing with the CMHC vacancy rates, the smaller units like the bachelors and the 1-bedrooms are having more challenges within this cycle. So we're seeing, and with the change in tenant preferences for larger units, we're seeing buildings with more 2 and 3 bedrooms to be better suited to handle that.
Yeah, I understand the bachelor, but the 1-bedroom, is there still not, significant demand for 1-bedroom apartments?
There's demand, but we're seeing more demand toward the larger units with more space, room to turn it into an office.
Okay, I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
My one quick question is just based similar to what Mr. McPherson was questioning. So you stated that there's an oversupply of multifamily in your presentation. Now, when I'm looking at the vacancy rates, some of the actuals that you've provided today, I don't see any evidence of that. Are you seeing evidence of vacancy rates being affected by oversupply at this point?
Well, essentially what we're seeing is a lot of permits, a lot of building for new multifamily. And when there's going to be newer stock that's offering rent incentives and different things, we're going to see people moving from these older buildings to get into those newer buildings that have more amenities, that are more geared toward what tenants want. So the combination in our cap rate study showing the amount of new supply, we know demand hasn't increased at the same pace, and we're seeing more vacancy in these older buildings. I think that does speak to issues with the multifamily supply.
But this particular property we're talking about right now does not, from what I can see, does it have a vacancy issue? It doesn't appear to at this point.
It seems to just be kind of carrying a market vacancy.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Valderrama, you had a follow-up question?
Yes, Madam Chair. That's in line with your questioning with regard to vacancy too. I think it might or might not answer your question regarding the trend on this specific property. However, in 2020, we can observe a jump in vacancy rate from 3.2 the previous year to 7.5%. However, there's also a big jump in repair and maintenance from 506,000 up to 597,000. Would that vacancy rate be adding a vacancy caused by renovations or prolonged renovation period?
So essentially, yeah, we did see a jump in vacancy in 2020 for this property, to be expected for properties that are located in close proximity to the university, that are rented by high numbers of students, and where we weren't seeing classes happening and we weren't seeing the same amount of students coming in from outside of city and country. In terms of the repair and maintenance values here that are shown on this line, we're stabilizing based on our breakdown chart. So I'm not really looking at these specific values shown here. And what was the second part of that question?
I think it's more of the relationship of the repair and maintenance jump in expense to the jump in the vacancy rate for this specific property.
Okay, and
I think that was answered.
Okay, so just to follow up, I mean, I haven't confirmed the specifics with the repair and maintenance with the property manager or the owner, but I would presume that with more vacancy allows opportunity to fix up those units that are now vacant.
Okay, so would you consider 7.5 to be an outlier compared to the 2.6, 1.9, and 3.2% vacancy of previous years prior to 2020?
I would say, I mean, we could see a trend toward increasing vacancy. So based on that trend of increasing vacancy, I wouldn't consider it to be an outlier necessarily without seeing what the other trend, because if we keep seeing increases, then that might not be an outlier. That might be the new standard.
And that's all the questions I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now, Ms. Cates, you had mentioned some rebuttal evidence on this property.
Yeah, I just had some short rebuttal.
Okay, so Mr. Lund, do we actually have that in our?
I have not shared it with you yet. I was waiting for it to be introduced.
Okay, all right. So let's just hang on a minute till we get it into our system and we can pull it up. Thank you.
Okay, it's just uploading. So if you just refresh your page, you should see it. And I will send it to the assessor as well. Okay, Ryan, I just sent it to you as well.
Thank you.
Okay, does everybody have it?
I do not.
Are we gonna get this by email?
It should be in the SharePoint.
It's not in my SharePoint, Stephen.
Okay, it's titled Altus Group Rebuttal. It's the third from the bottom. You
Yes.
will you will need
I'm
to.
sorry,
I have it.
I do now have it. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Valderrama, do you have it?
Not yet, Madam Chair.
Okay, well, let us know when you've got it and then we'll proceed.
I just received that and I'm opening it up.
Okay. Right, Ms. Cates, please proceed.
Okay, thank you. So essentially, this is just rebuttal to the city's cap rate for 2390 McPhillips. So what we have here is the investment brochure for the property. So if we turn to page 3, the property ended up selling for $1 million less than what it was listed for. And if we use the NOI they provided with the actual sale price in the 19 million range, we would get a 5% cap rate. So it just begs some questions as to how the city achieved the 4.79% cap rate. So that would suffice for this. I also had some verbal rebuttal that I wasn't sure if I could speak to, so I just wanted to see if I could speak to verbal rebuttal for another sale.
Well, if we don't have the evidence in front of us, I think that perhaps not.
Okay. Okay.
So is that all for this property?
That's all for this, and I just wanted to see about the verbal rebuttal. But if not, then that would conclude the rebuttal. So just short and sweet.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Valderrama, any questions regarding the rebuttal?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, where is the final sale price on this? Which page again? I'm sorry.
Sorry, just to clarify, the final sale price isn't on this because this is the investment brochure that went along with the property. So the sale price that it was listed at is on page 3 in the kind of upper right corner, but it ended up selling for about $1 million less than what it was listed for.
So this is for 2390 McPhillips, correct?
Correct.
And the listed price here is 20,440,000. That's the list price. And I do have 19.4 million on our page 7. So that's stabilized. Okay, so there's also nothing in here that says what's the final value on the sale. Okay, that's all, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moretzky, any questions on the rebuttal evidence?
I do not.
Mr. McPherson.
Yeah, I'm a little confused what this is rebutting. The assessment department listed 19 million for as a sale, did they not?
So this is in rebuttal to the cap rate that they've calculated for 2390 McPhillips.
Right, but how is that? Where's the NOI here?
So the NOI is on page 3 toward the top right of the page. They give a stabilized NOI of $970,869.
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that.
So just page.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got it. 970,869. And that's based on the 20,440,000. So that was their estimate of 4.75 if it's sold for that amount.
Yeah. That's what it looks like here. Yeah.
And if you use that stabilized NOI of 978.69 and applied the actual sale of 19.4, what would that cap rate be?
5%.
Okay. And they don't show the stabilized NOI work up here at all. They're just stating it. Is that correct?
Yeah, it appears, yeah, they're just stating it used by the investor.
And you don't have access to their income and expense statements, I'm assuming?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right, I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have no questions on the rebuttal evidence. So, Mr. Valderrama, any requirements to summarize on this property?
No requirements for summary, Madam Chair.
Ms. Cates, any summary?
No, thank you.
Okay, so it's almost 11 o'clock, so I think we should take a quick break, but let's make this only about 5 minutes, everybody, because we have a lot to get through yet here. So just 5 minutes and we'll recess, and then we'll come back and get going with 1785 Pembina Highway. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
So
Madam Chair.
we're looking at 11 o'clock then, Madam Chair?
Pardon me?
Pardon me.
Thank you. I'll call the meeting back to order, and the next item on the docket is 1785 Pembina Highway. So, Mr. Valderrama, if you can proceed when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-3413. It has a roll number of 03065218000. Excuse. It is located at 1785 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 with the reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $8,758,000. It is classified as 20 residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings and 2 stories. Its actual and effective year built is 1970. It has 70 suites with 80 outdoor parking. It has a land area of 62,248 square feet, a planned area of 21,624, and a gross floor area of 64,872 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. Page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, the property has 70 units. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,094.12. It has a gross potential rent of $919,061. It has a vacancy rate of 4.2%, which translates into $38,601. It has an effective gross income of $880,460. Applying the expense ratio of 47.28% or $416,281. The net operating income is $464,179. Using the capitalization rate of 5.3%, the capitalized income rounded is $8,758,000. On page 5 are my rent comparables. First one is 1777 Pembina Highway. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,101. The second one is located at 1793 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,110. The third one is located at 1833 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,102. And the last one is located at 1750 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,255. Page 6 is where my capitalization rate chart is. On page 7, it's the capitalization rate evidence. And on page 8 is the 2020 income and expense information. And that's my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cates, any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
Thank you. I just asked that my questions from the prior property be carried forward to this property as well as the next property, given that they're all part of the same complex. So it'll be the same.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
Okay, so, yes. So, 1750, 1777, and 1785 and 1793 are virtually identical blocks, correct? Or let's leave 1790. Yeah, 1793. Is it also, are they identical?
So the rent comparables, sir, on page 5.
I'm just asking about the three
sorry.
blocks because they're the, you know, they're very similar in effective year built, number of suites, gross floor area, everything is pretty much identical. They're identical blocks.
I'll just double check. My on page 8 is the combined roll numbers, so I'll just double check on the roll numbers again, Madam Chair, if I may.
Okay.
8,000, 6,000. 8,000. Sir, they all belong to the consolidated income and expense information submitted, and I have attached that on page 8 of my brief. So it looks like they are reporting one for these different roll numbers, reporting one income statement for these roll numbers. So it looks like they are pretty similar in how they look as well.
Would it be reasonable to conclude that they are virtually the same?
Without looking at the extensive or the extent of their maintenance and all that, looking at these numbers, it looks like they are the same.
So therefore, 1777, 1793 have different average monthly rents per unit. Okay, well, that's possible. Okay. Yeah, all right. It seems okay. Okay, that's the only question I had on that. And that's the only questions I have. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Mr.
you,
McPherson, any questions?
No, the assessment are very close. I guess there's some minor differences. The 1777, I believe, was 1969, so the subject is 1970, but it's the same cap rate. The expense ratio is a little different. So once again, this is model generated. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah. Okay, that's the only question I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I have no questions. So Ms. Cates, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the property is 1785 Pembina Highway. If you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $8,128,000. If you turn to page 4, you'll see a property description. So very similar to the last property in terms of also 2.5 story structures, built in 1970, and it's on 1.4 acres and zoned RMFM. So the subject property has a total of 70 units, including 46 one-bedroom and 24 two-bedroom. And the complex total is 210 units and 240 outdoor parking stalls. So page 5 has the Google map view. And then if you go to page 8, it's essentially, because the three properties mentioned are operated as part of a complex, it's the same analysis here. So just to be brief, the cap rate that we're requesting is 5.75 based on the same factors. And if you go to page 9, the income and expense information is also the same as the prior property, just given that they're consolidated on the income statements. So just to touch on those numbers briefly, our market rents applied are $2,798,127. We're applying a 4.2% vacancy rate, and we have an effective gross income of $2,735,160 for the complex. Taking the expenses into account and noting the same R&M stabilized value has been used. We have a 48.7% expense ratio. Our net operating income for the complex is $1,402,025, and our net operating income for the subject property is $467,342, with a cap rate of 5.75% applied. That would give us an indicated 2023 market value of $8,128,000 rounded, which would be $116,000 per suite. And if you go to page 11, the appendix again, just some interior photos. So these will be the same photos, as well as the city value, the financial statements, and then the R&M breakdown is provided on page 18. So you could see the layout of this specific R&M expenses per year. And then the final page, page 19, would just be the valuation sheet repeated, just for convenience. So that would conclude my presentation for 1785 Pembina. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. McPherson, any questions?
No, I will go with asked and answered from the previous. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Moretsky?
No, I do not.
Yes, and I'm the same. Questions previously can apply to this, and they were answered. So thank you very much. Mr. Valderrama, do you have any summary you'd like to make on this property?
No summary, Madam Chair.
Okay. Ms. Cates, any summary?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that concludes this item. The next item on the agenda is next property on the agenda is 1793 Pembina Highway. Mr. Valderrama, please proceed when you're ready.
Hang on one sec. I opened the wrong one. 1793. Madam Chair, it's 1793, correct?
Yes.
Okay. File number 3414.
That's
Just a
correct.
second.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
that's correct. Yep.
All right. I got it. Okay. The next property has a file number of 22-3414. It has a roll number of 03065216000. It is located at 1793 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. Using the reference date of April 1st, 2021, the assessed value for the property is $8,758,000. The property is classified as 20 residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings, 2 stories, an effective and actual year built of 1970. There are 70 suites with 80 outdoor parking. The property has a land area of 59,099 square feet, a planned area of 21,624 square feet, a gross floor area of 64,872 square feet. Next page, page 3, is where the aerial photo of the subject property. Page 4 is the income valuation summary. As mentioned, there are 70 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,094.12. The property has a gross potential rent of $919,061. The vacancy rate is 4.2%. In terms of dollars, that is $38,601. That's an effective gross income of $880,460. Applying the expense ratio of 47.28% or $416,281, the net operating income for this property is $464,179. Using the capitalization rate of 5.3%, the capitalized income rounded is $8,758,000. Page 5 are my rent comparables. The first one is located at 1750 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,255. The second one is located at 1785 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,110. The third one is located at 1777 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,101. And the last one is located at 1833 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,102. Page 6 is where my capitalization rates schedule is. And page 7 is the capitalization rate evidence. On page 8 is the income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cates, any questions?
No new questions for the assessor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPherson, any questions?
No, I do not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. So I have no questions either. So Ms. Cates, please proceed with your presentation when you're ready.
Thank you. So the property is 1793 Pembina Highway. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $8,128,000. If you turn to page 4, you'll see the property description. So similar to the last property, it is 2.5-story structures built in 1970. There's a land area of 1.4 acres and it's zoned RMFM. The unit breakdown is also the same, 70 units, which is 46 one-bedrooms and 24 two-bedroom units. If you go to page 5, you'll see the Google map view again. Page 8, the analysis is still the same. So we're using a 5.75% cap rate again, based on the same factors. If you turn to page 9, you'll see the valuation for the property. So the market rents for the complex are $2,798,127. We're applying a 4.2% vacancy, and we have an effective gross income of $2,735,160 for the complex. We have again stabilized the R&M at $2,095 a suite, and that full breakdown can be seen on page 18. Our expense ratio is 48.7%. The net operating income for the complex is $1,402,025, and the net operating income for the subject property is $467,342. With a 5.75% cap rate applied, that gives us an indicated market value of $8,128,000 rounded, which works out to $116,000 per suite. If you turn to page 11, that is the start of our appendix. So we've included interior photos as well as the city value financial statements. And on page 18 is the R&M breakdown, and page 19 is just the valuation sheet included again. So that concludes my presentation for 1793 Pembina. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. McPherson?
None. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And any requirement for summation on either part?
No requirement for summation on my part, Madam Chair.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes this property. So the next item on the agenda is 1792 Pembina Highway. And Mr. Valderrama, you can proceed when you're ready.
Just a preliminary issue, Madam Chair, with regard to non-co-op. And I'm
Oh, I'm
requesting
sorry.
it.
I sorry. I just scrolled down and saw that. My apologies.
That's okay.
Yes. So can you, since you have a request of non-cooperation, please proceed with the discussion of that matter. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam
Yeah,
Chair.
still read the roll number. Still read the roll number on, please. So yeah, thanks.
Yes, Madam Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-1236. It has a roll number of 03093003250. The property is located at 1792 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. Using the reference date of April 1st, 2021, the assessed value for the property is $60,333,000. It is classified as 20 residential 2 with a taxable liability. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings, 6 stories, an actual and effective year built of 2019. It has 282 suites with 129 indoor parking and 159 outdoor parking.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. Should we not be dealing with the?
Yes, we should. I just wanted you to read the roll number on. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. So if you could now
I apologize.
proceed with your evidence regarding the non-cooperation. Thank you.
Yes, I'm requesting for, as mentioned earlier, I'm requesting for a non-cooperation based on Section 53(3)(b) of the Municipal Assessment Act, and if a reduction in assessment is ordered, that it follow 54(3)(2) of the Municipal Assessment Act. On page, let me just go scroll through down. On page 12 is where the supporting documents are for my request. I do have attached all the documents in there that I can find in our file for this property. I do have the signature on page 19. Page 18 is the tracking that it was delivered. It was received on June 15th, I believe, at 4:08 p.m. And the blank pages of the INEs. And that's my supporting documents for the non-compliance request, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Cates, what's your response to this?
We're not in dispute with the assessor's request.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're just going to take a quick recess for the panel to discuss this, and then we'll reconvene. Thank you. Thank you. Call the meeting back to order. The panel has discussed the evidence and has agreed to grant the non-cooperation request. So Ms. Cates, that means we will hear from you first. So please proceed when you're ready on this property.
Thank you. So the property is 1792 Pembina Highway. So if you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment, which is $55,520,000. If you turn to page 4, you'll see a property description. So the subject property is located on Pembina Highway at its intersection with Adamar Road in the Pembina Strip area of Winnipeg. The property consists of a 6-story structure built in 2019. The site size is 4.1 acres and zoned RMFL. The subject property has a total of 282 units, including 20 bachelor units, 79 one-bedroom units, 152 two-bedroom units, and 31 three-bedroom units. There are 129 indoor parking stalls and 158 outdoor parking stalls. If you look to page 5, you'll see a Google Map view of the subject property. And if you go to page 8, you'll see our income approach. So for the purposes of this report, we are disputing the assessor's cap rate of 4.75%. We are using a cap rate of 5.25% based on the cap rate study that we discussed previously. So our base cap rate for this property is 5.25% And then we did an analysis to see if any further adjustments were required based on site-specific factors of the subject. What we found is that the risk factors kind of balance themselves out. So we're staying with the 5.25% cap rate request. So if you go to page 9, you'll see the income valuation. So our potential market gross rents applied are $5,162,160 based on a projection from the actual income. We are applying a 4.2% vacancy rate. So the effective gross income is $4,945,349. Given that this property is so new, we don't have expense information to provide here. So we've applied a market expense ratio of 41.1%, giving us a net operating income of $2,914,789. And with a cap rate of 5.25% applied, that gives us an indicated market value of $55,520,000 rounded, which would be $197,000 per suite. And then if you go to page 11, that is where the appendix starts. So we've included some interior photos, as well as the city value and the rent roll as of April 1/21 that was used to configure the rents that we're using for our potential gross rents. As well, I've included the R&M breakdown, even though we don't have the data for that, but that's still been included on page 22. And again, the final page is the valuation repeated. So that would conclude my presentation for 1792 Pembina Highway.
Thank you very much. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
No new questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
I do not.
Mr. McPherson, any questions?
I guess just kind of on the adjustments that you're making, you stated that plus adjustments, the increased risk and decreased risk kind of offset each other? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So the saturation of newer apartments is the increased risk. Is this not one of the newer apartments?
This is one of the newer apartments, but from our cap rate study, and I can quote the exact page. So from page 40 of the cap rate study, there's evidence showing that newer projects are being absorbed at a slower rate. So the oversupply of multifamily would have an impact on all the multifamily in the market. And we could see here that the actual vacancy of the property as of April 1/21 was 30%.
Right. And you're saying that wood frame construction is an increased risk, but I think prior when I asked you if there was a difference between the wood frame and masonry, you said you didn't think that there was an adjustment.
Okay. So just to clarify that point, yeah, we would consider wood frame to be increased risk. With the prior one, it was multiple low-rise buildings and masonry. So while I would consider masonry to be a good quality material and better than wood, because there was multiple buildings for that property, we would have had to make an adjustment for both of those, because we would consider multiple buildings on the site to be an increased risk. So if we had a decreased risk for the masonry in that case, but then the increased risk for multiple buildings, then those would have balanced each other out. So I didn't make an adjustment there, but I do agree that wood frame would be inferior to masonry or concrete.
Okay, I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I think I have no further questions on this property. Any requirement for summation. Oh no, I'm sorry, because we did this the other way around. Mr. Valderrama, it's your turn to present, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll continue my the information on the subject property based on my evidence. Again, the parcel or the property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings, 6 stories, an actual year and effective year built of 2019. It has 282 suites with 129 indoor parking and 159 outdoor parking. The land area for the property is 177,719 square feet, a planned area of 45,352 square feet, and a gross floor area of 317,464 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, the property has a total number of units of about 282, with an average monthly rent per unit of 1,499 and 83 cents. The gross potential rent for the property is 5,075,425. There's a vacancy rate of 4.2% or $213,168. It has an effective gross rent or gross income of 4,862,257. The expense ratio is 41.06% or $1,996,443. And the net operating income is 2,865,814. Applying the capitalization rate of 4.75%, the capitalized income rounded is $6,333,000. On page 6 are rent comparables. The first one is located at 140 Eaglewood Drive. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,434. The second one is located at 25 Ancaster Gate. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,537. And on the last comparable 3, is located at 2475 Waverly Street. It has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,411. Page 6 is where the capitalization rate chart is. And page 7 is the capitalization rate evidence. And I would like to make a typo correction, if I may, Madam Chair. Instead of 2020, it's supposed to be 2021.
Okay, thank you.
I have attached the 2021 income and expense information beginning page 8. And this is the 2021 income and expense mailer submitted to us. And that's my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cates, any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
Yes, thank you. So in looking at the cap rates on page 6, in terms of the broker information you've provided, would you agree that the low end of the ranges established by the brokers would be for the highest quality properties?
I cannot agree or disagree. It's just I'm not sure what type of properties they have entered in here in their study, cap rate study. It could be all of their stock or all of their best or worst. I don't know. So I'm not. I don't have that information. So it's hard for me to agree or disagree with the question.
Okay. So would you agree that wood frame would generally not be considered as high quality as concrete or steel?
There could be an argument to be made whether a wood frame is inferior or superior quality in terms of the frame build. And with the cost of construction nowadays, it's hard to determine really. It's I believe it is the decision of the contractor or builder where they can profit more, whether on a wood frame or a concrete. I believe they are almost interchangeable in terms of which one in the market is more feasible in terms of their in terms of their objective to earn or to save on materials. However, without really looking into the cost of the construction between wood frame and masonry or concrete, I'm not sure if which one would be inferior or superior, because nowadays we know that wood frame is prevalent in the construction industry, and whether it is inferior or superior, I believe that the contractors know which one would last longer, or which if their construction frame would be lasting 50 or 40 years, or the entire economic life of a building. So there's an argument to be made. So it could or could not be an inferior or superior. And I honestly have my opinion would be they're pretty much the same or interchangeable.
And just to clarify, that would be they're interchangeable based on potentially costs, not quality, correct?
And of course, I mean, a lot of other things factoring in. Right now, it looks like they are pretty much interchangeable. They change whichever is cheaper, so it means that the quality is there.
Okay.
For both wood frame and concrete frame.
Okay, but would you agree that wood frame tends to have some limitations that other materials may not? So for example, like due to limitations to the material itself, like height restrictions that have to be imposed, less efficient land use to achieve the same number of units, etc. Like those would occur for wood frame and maybe not for other builds?
To be honest, I'm not sure. Again, an argument could be made. However, in my opinion, the quality between wood frame and concrete frame is, with also the technology that has arisen over the last few years or over the decade, I believe they could be interchangeable. Again, I mean, it's an opinion. It's my opinion.
Okay, but you are aware of like height restrictions with wood frame buildings. Like for instance, you probably couldn't do a 20-story wood frame tower. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That concludes my questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McPherson, any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
No, I do not. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Moretsky, do you have any questions?
Oh yeah, just to get back to the wood frame versus concrete question. So in these CAP studies, do they take that into consideration at all? The construction of the type of construction of the apartments?
Our cap rate study is all of the properties in the city, all property types. So it includes all frame structure for all the property types in the city.
So you mentioned that you have an opinion on the wood frame versus concrete, but no information really. Maybe I'm paraphrasing too much there, but anyways, I believe you did say.
No, I did. There's no attachment on that one, so yeah.
Would it be helpful if there was studies done on the differences, yield or cap between based on type of construction framing? Information.
To be honest, I'm not. I'm not sure. I don't. I'm not involved in the construction industry, so I'm not sure. It may or may not help them determine, or maybe they know better. So I'm not sure if I don't know. I'm not sure.
What would be your opinion on, let's say, a prospective buyer or renter when they're looking for a place to live? You think that they might consider whether there's concrete floors or wood floors?
Again,
how much they're going to pay for it, things like that. And the quality of the suite, I guess, in general.
I am not sure how market responds to it, to be honest, sir.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have no questions. My questions have been answered. So, Mr. Valderrama, any need to summarize on this property?
No, I don't have any summation, Madam
Okay.
Chair.
Okay, Ms. Cates, any summary?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. That concludes 1792 Pembina Highway. So the next item on the docket this morning is 2393 Pembina Highway. So Mr. Valderrama, when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the next property has a file number of 22-3416. It has a roll number of 03062 924000. It is located at 2393 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023 using the reference date of April 1st, 2021. The assessed value for the property is $10,306,000. It is classified as a residential 2 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 2 buildings, 3 stories. Its actual and effective year built is 1973. It has 84 suites with 62 outdoor parking. It has a land area of 101,123 square feet, a planned area of 25,262 square feet, and a gross floor area of 75,786 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. Page 4 is an income valuation summary. Again, there are 84 units with an average monthly rent per unit of $1,067.85. The gross potential rent for the property is $1,076,393. The vacancy rate is 4.2%, which translates into $45,209. The effective gross income is $1,031,184. Applying the expense ratio of 47.03% or $484,966. The net operating income is $546,218. Using the capitalization rate of 5.3%, the capitalized income is $10,306,000 rounded. On the next page, page 5, are rent comparables. The first one is located at 2945 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,346. The second one is located at 1777 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,101. The next comparable is located at 2965 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,212. The last one is located at 1785 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,110. Page 6 is where my capitalization rates chart is. Page 7 is the capitalization rate evidence. Excuse me. And on page 8 is the 2020 income and expense information for the subject property. And that's my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cates, any questions from Mr. Valderrama?
Thank you. Since our primary contention is cap rate, I just asked that my previous questions from other properties on cap rate just be carried forward to this property as well. So I don't have any new questions.
Okay, thank you very much. We will take that into consideration. Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
I do not, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. McPherson, any questions?
I do not, thank you.
And I do not either. So Ms. Cates, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. So the property is 2393 Pembina Highway. If you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $9,331,000. If you turn to page 4, you'll see our property description. So the subject property is located on the west side of Pembina Highway between Markham Road to the north and Bison Drive to the south in the Montcalm area of Winnipeg. The property consists of 2 3-story structures with no basement, built in 1973. The site is irregularly shaped, and the site size is 2.3 acres and zoned RM-FM. The subject property has a total of 84 units, including 49 one-bedroom units and 35 two-bedroom units. There are a total of 62 outdoor parking stalls. If you turn to page 5, you'll see a Google Map view of the subject neighborhood. And if you turn to page 8, you'll see our income approach. So for the purposes of this report, we are disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5.3%. We are using a cap rate of 5.75% based on our capitalization rate study discussed earlier. So the base cap rate for this property is 5.5% based on the first table of the age stratified cap rates. And then we've done a site-specific analysis. So in terms of the condition, the overall condition is good. They've been maintained, so that would decrease the risk. The parking for this property would increase the risk since it is less than 1-to-1 ratio with the units. And as well, again, we're looking at the supply and demand. With the saturation of new apartments, we're going to see the flight to quality, and that would put these type of properties at risk. So if you go to page 9, that will show the breakdown of the valuation. So the market gross rents applied are $1,097,403. We are using a vacancy rate of 4.2%. And the effective gross income when adding in the other forms of income would come to $1,093,746. So our expenses are shown below with the remarks on the side. All of the averages are just 3-year averages. We didn't see any outliers there. Our repair and maintenance has been stabilized at $19.49 a suite, with the breakdown of that shown on page 19. So our expense ratio for the property is 50.9%, giving us a net operating income of $536,530. And with a cap rate of 5.75%, that would lead to an indicated market value of $9,331,000 rounded, which would be $111,000 per suite. So if you go to page 11, that is the start of our appendix. So we've included some interior photos, as well as the city evaluation, the financial statements, and then you'll see on page 19 the stabilization of the repair and maintenance, as well. Then on page 20 is just the evaluation sheet again. And that would conclude my presentation for this property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Balderrama, any questions?
No new questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, Mr. Moretsky, any questions?
Just that my question, our question and answers regarding the vacancy, market vacancy stand for this one as well.
Okay, thank you.
Should I provide more detail on that, or?
Sorry, can you just say, are you asking if it's the same? Are you asking the applicant if it's the same?
No, I
guess
I was just saying I'm going to ask the same question as I have on the other ones.
Okay.
Is the I'll just ask the question. Is the subject stabilized a rate of 4.2% you have on page 9, again, market vacancy?
That would be a market vacancy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McPherson.
Just, I guess it's generalization. When you do your site-specific adjustments to your cap rate, are these done on what, quarter percentage points, or is there an actual? Everyone is a quarter point. That doesn't matter what the category is. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're doing a quarter point adjustment for each factor. If we started assigning kind of different amounts, it would get pretty granular. So in our view, anything we're putting as a factor here would warrant the 25-point adjustment. If it's only a slight factor, we wouldn't include it in the table. So we're just including factors that we feel are very relevant.
Okay, thank you. And I think your statement was you used a 3-year average because you didn't see any anomalies or outliers. And if you would have gone to 5 years, is that correct?
No, I guess I just wanted to make the distinction from some of the other properties, because for some of the other ones, for the expenses under the remarks, for some of them we did 28, we just did 2 years if there was an outlier. So I was just trying to make the distinction that for these ones, we just used the 3-year average, that's standard. We didn't see any outliers here that we needed to treat it like some of the other ones where we just did an average of 2018 and 19 or 2019 and 20, for example.
I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I have no further questions on this property. So any need for summation from either of you at this point? Mr. Valderrama?
No need for summation on my part. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cates?
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that concludes 2393 Pembina Highway. So now we will move on to 2084 Pembina Highway. And Mr. Valderrama, you can proceed when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. The next property has a file number of 22-2667. It has a roll number of 03053848500. It is located at 2084 Pembina Highway. We're dealing with the roll year of 2023. Using the reference date of April 1st, 2021, the assessed value is $15,490,000. The property is classified as a residential 3 with a liability of taxable. The property is a residential apartment with 7 buildings and 3 to 6 stories. The actual and effective year built is 1979. It has 159 suites with 191 outdoor parking. The land area is 220,707 square feet and a planned area of 38,772 square feet. The gross floor area is 154,160 square feet. On page 3 is the aerial photo of the subject property. On page 4 is the income valuation summary. Again, the property has 159 total units with an average monthly rent per unit of $988.53. The gross potential rent for the property is $1,886,115. The vacancy rate is 4.2%, which is $79,217. The effective gross income is $1,806,898. Applying the expense ratio of 53.28% or $962,715. The net operating income is $844,183. Using the capitalization rate of 5.45%, the capitalized income rounded is $15,490,000. On page 5 are some rent comparables. The first one is located at 2080 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,201. The next one is located at 1777 Pembina Highway. The average monthly rent per unit is $1,101. The next one is located at 75 South Park Drive. The average monthly rent per unit is $930. And the last comparable is located at 925 Chancellor Drive, has an average monthly rent per unit of $1,016. Page 6 is where my capitalization rate chart is. On page 7 is the capitalization rate evidence. And beginning of page 8 to page 11 or 12, I should say, is where the 2020 income and expense mailer for the subject property is. And that's my presentation, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cates, any questions for Mr. Valderrama?
Yes, thank you. So for your income value summary on page 4, looking at your expenses and expense ratio, are these inputs modeled?
Yes, they are a model-derived parameter.
And have you provided evidence in your submission that supports the expense ratio here?
None on my brief.
Okay. And had you considered looking at the actual expenses in place for this property?
I have attached the 2020 income and expense information. However, I went with the model-derived expenses.
Okay. And would you agree that social housing carries more inherent risk than standard market apartments?
I'm not sure if there would be higher or lower inherent risk for social housing. So I cannot answer the question, Madam Chair. It's more of it all depends on the market, and I'm not sure what's with the social housing, if it carries inherent risk, more inherent risk or less inherent risk.
Okay. And that would conclude my new questions. And again, I just asked that my other questions regarding cap rate previously just be carried forward.
Thank you. We will definitely do that. Mr. McPherson, any questions?
The model derived value, correct, Mr. Valderrama?
Yes, sir. It is a model-derived parameters.
And is there any distinction made for social housing versus I don't want to say normal, typical,
or straightforward,
typical rental housing? Is there a distinction made in the model?
I believe I'm not sure how the model responds, if it is a social housing or a co-op or
Okay, so it doesn't differentiate for the rental amount or the expense ratio or the vacancy, anything as far as you know?
I am not sure if there is any distinction.
Okay.
I'm sorry on that one.
That's fine. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Moretsky.
Yes, on your page 4, income value summaries, it appears like this expense rate you have of 53.28 is a fair chunk higher than the rest of them that we've looked at this morning that have kind of consistently been, 2 or 3% below 50. What do you think is the reasoning for that? The model would have spit something out a little bit higher this time.
As I've mentioned in the earlier questioning, I'm not sure how the model derived the parameters on specific properties. However, it could be noted that expense ratio on this specific property is higher compared to the others. But again, I mean, that is comparing assessments, one assessment to another. So yeah, it's hard to determine any specific reason why the model specifically assigned 53.28% on this property.
That's the only question I had. Thank you.
Thank you. My question was, was in a similar vein as the other two, because the cap rate here on similar age properties is also higher. So I'm assuming your answer would be the same, but it seems the model has taken something into account there.
There are differences, of course. So I'm not sure how and what are the factors that were considered by the model.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ms. Cates, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. So the property is 2084 Pembina Highway. If you turn to page 2, you'll see our requested assessment of $11,577,000. I've included photos since there's kind of two types of properties going on here. There's townhouses and there's also an apartment tower. So I've included on the first page an exterior shot of the townhouse, and then on page 3 just a shot of the apartment tower. So if you turn to page 5, you'll see our property description. So the subject property is located on the east side of Pembina Highway between Thatcher Drive and Chancellor Drive in the Montcalm area of Winnipeg. The property consists of a 6-story apartment and 3-story townhouses built in 1979. The site size is 5.1 acres and it's zoned RMFM. The subject property has a total of 159 units, where 87 are apartment units and 72 are townhouse units. So the overall suite mix includes 7 bachelor suites, 67 1-bedroom, 54 2-bedroom, and 31 3-bedroom. And there are 191 outdoor parking stalls. If you turn to page 6, you'll see a Google Map view of the subject neighborhood. And if you turn to page 9, you'll see our income approach. So for the purposes of this report, we're disputing the assessor's cap rate of 5.45%, and we're using a cap rate of 6% based on our cap rate study discussed previously. So our base cap rate for this property is 5.5, and we've made adjustments for building type here, considering there's multiple buildings, multiple townhouse buildings and an apartment tower. And we've made an adjustment for durability and quality of income, given that this is social housing. So that leads us to a 6% cap rate. If you turn to page 10, you'll see our valuation for the property. So since this is social housing and the actual rents are not at market, we are accepting the city's effective gross income so that we can have market rents here. So we're using their market gross rents of $1,886,115. We're applying a market vacancy of 4.2%. So based on being social housing, there are wait lists for these types of properties due to like the rents being suppressed. So they won't have market vacancy levels in terms of their actual vacancy. So we need to use a market vacancy for the analysis. So that gives us an effective gross income of $1,806,898. You could see the expenses used. So for some of the averages, we've used just the 2019 to 2020 rather than the 2018 to 20, where we deemed outliers to exist. We have repair and maintenance of $1,698 a suite, and that's stabilized. And the expense ratio given is 61.6% based on the actual expenses of the property. So the net operating income is $694,613. And with a 6% cap rate, that gives us an indicated value of $11,577,000 rounded, which would be $73,000 per suite. And if you go to page 12, that's the start of the appendix. I've included some photos from the website. I presume these to be of the apartment suites because they noted on their website that some of the apartment suites had been upgraded. So I presume these are the apartment suites. So you see basic finishes, As well, I've included the city value, so that starts on page 18. As well, we've included the financial statements, and the repair and maintenance breakdown is on page 35. As well, the valuation is again on page 36. Now you'll note the repair and maintenance breakdown for this property on page 35 is not as detailed as the other properties, and that's just based on the information that we had available. So not all of the statements break it down like line item by line item. So what we've done is we've stabilized the totals for this property just because we didn't have the line by line breakdown for all of the years. So that would conclude my presentation on this property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Valderrama, any questions?
Yes, Madam Chair. So for on page 10, for the income and expense stabilization or the income workup, so the revenue or the income side is based on market. Is that correct?
Yes, the revenues are stabilized at market because the actuals are not market rents.
Yeah. And the expenses are based on actual expenses?
The expenses are based on actuals because while the rents aren't market, the expenses are what the property has actually experienced in terms of their expenses. And social housing can tend to have higher expense ratios. So we've reflected that here with the actual expenses.
And on line 31, the total average expense is lower than the stabilized. Is that correct?
Yeah, it looks like the average is lower than the stabilized. And that's because in the stabilized columns, only the ones stated as averages are averages. The other ones are pulling in from the 2020 year. So there would be differentiation between the stabilized values and the averages.
And you mentioned that it was renovated, correct? Based on the pictures?
Based on the pictures and statements on the website, it appeared the apartment units were renovated. I didn't see any mention to the townhouse units being renovated. So it appears it's just the apartment units.
And that's all the questions I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Moransky, any questions?
Yeah, the cap rate information on page 9 again. Maybe my apologies if somebody has asked this question previously in other assessments, but anyways. Building type and construction was considered a mitigating fact, increasing risk. In this case, from your base of 5.5. That's masonry construction in this one. You had mentioned before that wood was a higher risk than masonry or concrete. So doesn't this appear to contradict that?
In terms of this one, I completely agree about the wood and the masonry. It was more so given how many buildings are on the site here. The other one where we had a conflict, it was just 2 buildings on the site. But if we go back to the aerial, I'll just try to find it. Yeah, like if we go back to the aerial map on page 5, there's just so many buildings on the site, and those would require all their own roofs, their own systems, their own hot water tank, etc. So that, given how many buildings there are, that would increase the risk. Whereas for the other ones where it was masonry and there was only 2 buildings, we just kind of considered those canceled out. But so I hope that answers.
It does, yeah. It just that it mentions 2 factors there, and one of them probably didn't apply to increasing the risks, right? Am I correct? That it's just the multiple buildings.
For sure, and that's probably, we should be breaking those out, but just based on the format of our table at this point, that's just how they were. But yeah, that's a good point.
Fair enough. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Okay, Mr. Valderrama, I did see that you raised your hand, so when the panel's finished, I'll come back to you. Thank you. Mr. McPherson, do you have any questions?
Just a couple. Is there any restrictions or encumbrances for this property to sell on the open market?
I haven't looked into that. I'm not sure.
Okay, so if it were to be sold on the open market, is it reasonable to expect, if you're looking at market rents, would it be reasonable to expect 61.5% expenses for a property of this type?
So you're saying if it's sold on the open market and they turned it into just like a standard market apartment, then would 61% be reasonable? Is that the question?
That's sort of the crux of my question. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, like what we would say for this one is that social housing often has a lot of deferred maintenance, and things are built to a more utilitarian standard rather than luxurious finishes. So if this property was on the open market and they did not continue it as social housing, I do feel it's appropriate to have that high expense ratio in place due to everything they would have to do to bring it up to market standard and deal with that deferred maintenance.
Okay, so if you're reflecting that in a 61.5% expense ratio, which seems to be higher than what we normally see, are you not sort of double accounting when you adding for durability, quality of income, and you're adding that to the cap rate as well? Is that not sort of accounting for it twice?
We didn't feel it was double counting just because the cap rate is more so just in our view capturing kind of the risk and the feeling that investors would get from the property, whereas reflecting the actual expenses still speaks to what the potential income earning would be.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My questions have been answered because I had the same question about the social housing and if there's any restrictions on this property. So Mr. Valderrama, you had raised your hand. Do you have a follow-up question?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. It's just with regard to the capitalization rate. Would you agree that the capitalization rate would also include the risk of the income potential of a property, specifically this one?
Well, that's why we're applying a higher capitalization rate for this property than for the other properties that we've seen on the docket, is to reflect the issue with durability and quality of income.
And as mentioned earlier, is it accurate to say that there is a waiting list or waiting period to get into this type of properties?
Yes, there are generally waiting lists for social housing where rents are suppressed.
So would it be safe to assume that, or would it be safe to assume that the income potential on this one is a lower risk because it's almost a guarantee that you will be collecting income on this type of property?
So when we're looking at the properties, we're doing a market analysis while looking at site-specific factors. So while it's social housing, yeah, they're not going to have a problem filling it because there are waiting lists for social housing. But if an investor was to take it and convert it from social housing, let's say, then that would be a different story. So whether there's less risk with social housing with filling it is not really the purpose of the exercise here to determine the market value of the property.
I have no further questions, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you very much, both of you, for your presentations today. That concludes the final item on the docket. So we've heard all the items that were scheduled for this morning, and I now declare the hearing adjourned. Again, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
You too, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.